There are New Democrat strategists who apparently believe that if they walked away from this agreement, they would have time to showcase the NDP as the real alternative to Justin Trudeau. I'm not sure that I see any evidence of that. They would have a major Quebec problem. They're not going anywhere. There's no orange wave in the making here. But you could see it as an early attempt to put lipstick on a pig, as in
It's
whatever
true.
comes out, he can say, well, you see, I forced them to come up with something in time for my deadline. But Andrew is right. The NDP does not hold the balance of power in this parliament. It
The
has
bloc,
to share it with the Bloc Québécois.
the
So
bloc has
between
the
the two of
balance of
them,
power.
I don't think we're going to be precipitated in an election that neither.
And this is why we're going to see the bloc, the NDP, the Greens, and the Liberals are going to form a coalition after the Conservatives win the most seats, but not a majority. And then the Conservative voters are going to have a complete freak out because they don't understand how the Westminster system works. And we're going to see a January 6th type event based on people not understanding how our political system works. That's what's going to happen.
Party really wants.
Althea.
The Liberals seem to think that a deal is still possible in the making. I have a hard time seeing where that middle ground is, but if you parse Mr. Singh's word in that press conference, he did really just talk about introducing a piece of legislation that lays the pathway for a universal system. So he didn't even say he's requiring the Liberals. He wants the Liberals to have a single payer, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, there's a fixed deadline before the next election. It's just legislation being tabled. So I don't know. We had also heard that there might be, like, the middle room might be a universal coverage plan for very, very expensive drugs. That still seems to be something that's being
Because, like, how angry will people be if Trudeau loses but remains prime minister because of a coalition that he then leads to oppose the Conservatives? People will lose their minds. Like, people will lose their fucking minds. And it will be even better because it'll be completely legal in the way that our system works.
than the Conservatives. So it might also be, not a bad thing for the Liberals to have a secondary partner here.
Isn't the lose-lose, though, that the NDP doesn't get credit for anything? I mean, isn't that what the Liberals are counting on? That we get to the election and no one can remember anything that the NDP did?
I think the NDP will remind us about dental care every single day.
Chantal, fair enough.
Well, but they certainly have been reminding people every single day, and they have seen no evidence that it does anything for them in public opinion polls, and they have seats that are on the line.
Foreign policy, though, that's where they get their points.
Looking at gains, they're still,
but they're not allowed to talk about
so
that here, I guess. This is purely just...
question I would ask if I were a New Democrat looking all...
This just made me think of something, though, because I've heard so many people say that the Liberals and Bloc won't work together. They will. But if the NDP were to pull their support, then without a doubt, the Bloc and the Liberals, because then the Liberals would say, you are our only hope and be able to stay in power. What do you want? We'll give you anything you want. And literally the Bloc is the party of what the NDP thinks they're going to do, of if you don't give us support, we won't be your friend. That's Quebec. They've been like that for 100 years, and it works. That's the difference. It works because they have the numbers. You don't win without Quebec, right? So if the NDP were to pull their support, the Libs and the Bloc would for sure work together, because then it would prop up it would empower the Bloc even more. Oh yeah, that is, and then the NDP would probably be like, okay, actually we will make a coalition because we just hate Conservatives that much. That's what's going to happen.
At all this, it's not whether it's win-win, lose-lose, it's what if it doesn't really matter?
Well, let's remember, the reason they got into the supply and confidence agreement was really as a defensive mechanism, so they wouldn't have to answer the question every day, why are you propping up this government? It gave them a ready-made answer. If that's no longer needed, and I think the low ebb of the Liberals' fortunes gives them some room to distance themselves, it doesn't mean they want to force an election, because the NDP isn't doing that great either, but it may be the time to put some distance between them.
Well, and to Chantal's point, if they're not getting credit for the wins that they have already had, what's the point of trying to push for more wins? Right. Why not create that space that distinguishes yourself from the governing party?
Chantal, let me get you to weigh in on what Althea said there about the
It
Bloc.
will literally make them look pathetic, though. Like that's what will happen. They'll create space from them, and then they'll have no other choice but to create a coalition with them, which will make the NDP look like a pathetic joke, which is probably what will happen.
Being more bullish against the Conservatives. Do you see that too? And is that because there's something to worry about in Quebec for the Bloc?
To worry about, I don't think we're there yet. But I do believe that two things. The Bloc Québécois leader, Yves-François Blanchet, is not going out of his way to put the Liberals on trial, because what he does not want is for Quebec voters to suddenly want a change in government. At that point, the Bloc is not the answer. But the other thing that I've perceived,
Yes, that's
just looking
true.
from the
They don't
outside,
want to
is
hurt the Liberals.
there is a
They
lot
like
of
the Liberals.
personal bad blood now between Mr. Blanchet and Mr. Poilievre.
Yes.
And anything that looks like a win for the Conservative,
Oh my God. See? This is exactly what I'm saying. They aren't, the Conservatives will not be able to woo the Bloc to make them be able to give the Conservatives what they want to create a Conservative Bloc government, because the two of them don't like each other. He isn't Stephen Harper. He's not going to win Quebec. And you don't win Canada without Quebec.
the Bloc will oppose.
Althea, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, we had a press conference, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, where Yves-François Blanchet, even in English, went out of his way to say that, I'm not sure that I'm even allowed to use this word on the air, but, that Pierre Poilievre did not have an economic policy, and then used a word I'm not supposed to use, I think. He was very, he went all in on a very personal attack against the Conservative leader that seemed to kind of come out of nowhere. I mean, in scrums, he does.
No,
his
it didn't
best
come
to
out of nowhere.
distinguish
It
himself
came
from
out of
the-
Tucker Carlson as insulting Quebec. And so Blanchet had to do something, and that's what he did. And it was fucking marvelous. And didn't it make him look really good to centrists and left of center voters? It did. It made him look great, because Tucker Carlson, why would he say that shit? Why would you say stuff like that when you're trying to make friends with Quebec? Why? You literally are either so stupid that you're saying the exact thing that's going to screw over your chance as Conservatives of winning, or you're like an agent of chaos that's like working on like your legitimate control, like you're a fucking fellow traveler. That's a whole other story, and they haven't talked about Tucker Carlson and Putin on this, and they probably won't. But like, Tucker Carlson is a trip.
Yes, he still attacks the Liberals, but he's really trying to. He talks about Pierre Poilievre more than he talks about Justin Trudeau. It's often very much in contrast. How the Conservatives are not doing enough, how their values are not in line with Quebecers, constantly. So it is. You've seen the Conservatives, itching up in public opinion polls in the province, and so perhaps Chantal is right that they don't have anything to worry about at the moment, but. They are breathing down the Liberals' necks in terms of being number 2 in the province.
I'll give you a last quick word, Andrew.
Yeah, they had something of a surge going on in Quebec until about a month or two ago, and then it seemed to top out. Now, what happens when you get close to the election and it looks like Ontario is going to go Conservative in a big way, if that's the case? It'd be interesting to watch Quebecers' reaction then.
That won't happen because Doug Ford is going to go down for fraud or for something, and Ontario is not going to go Conservative. Ontario is going to go center red because of how bad the Ford decay and the Ford like him going down for what's going to happen is going to make the Conservatives look. It's the same thing that they did with Tory, but bigger.
See, I said we were going to just last word.
But the last time that happened, Quebec voted for the NDP.
That's right.
I was going to just make you talk about the NDP, but then you all brought up interesting things, so we went a different direction. That's why I love you all. Thank you. And now I'll send things back to Adrienne, and she, of course, is in Toronto.